Welcome back to my video series on Franco Albrecht, the lieutenant who is accused of trying to topple the state with a vintage pistol and claiming a refugee on it. And yes, before you ask, I have not dreamed before that I could ever say a sentence like this with a straight face, but here we are. So he is standing trial right now, and I have spent the first video on lining out how he was discovered by the police, by the authorities, and by the media in the first place, and what they accuse him of. I used the second episode of this series to present the details to you of the accusation, and in particular the evidence the left puts out to substantiate their claims. And the third installment was used to discuss what ideological problems they have with him, what he actually thinks, or what we can actually conclude from the evidence the left presents to us about his thoughts, his thought crimes, as I called it. I do respect freedom of thoughts, and I also do respect freedom of associations, and therefore the last video as well as this video will be a look into their accusations and not so much a trial against Mr. Albrecht. This is about explaining what smear tactics the left is using against him. And so this is a dive into his social environment. It begins, of course, with the core that's connected with his accusation. As you may remember from my second video, he has a brother-in-law whose home was also raided, who was also accused of toppling the state. The word they use in numerous media articles as well as legal documents was he committed a staatsgefährdend crime. Staatsgefährdend is a word composed of the German word for state, Staat, and the German word for threat, Gefahr. Gefährdend means is the adjective, so it's like a threat to the state. He committed a crime that is supposedly a threat to the state, is toppling the state, is removing the government through violence. That was what he was accused of. Since then, they have dismissed these claims. The investigations have stopped into Max Tischer, but they continue into Franco Albrecht. They are both connected through Max Tischer's sister Sophia Tischer, who was temporarily a member of the party SED or Linke. That's an oddball. I don't know how much she is actually into this, if she is a communist or not. SED was the party that ran the dictatorship in East Germany. It's more likely that she underwent some research, some investigation, like the Project Veritas stuff in America. So they are connected through Sophia Tischer. She is the sister of Max Tischer, and she's connected with Franco Albrecht through a phrase that I found in the newspaper called that they used. They founded a family together in Offenbach. So I assume they are married and have children, at least one. When Franco Albrecht's home was raided, they also raided the home of Max Tischer. That list was a bit longer. Tischer's list was longer, and contained a lot of individuals and organizations. And they were remarked, or they had these notes on them, just some letters that remained unexplained to this day. Some journalists of the communist newspaper Taz went on a research spree to find the connections in the Bundeswehr and in the police department, and they found a chat group network on Telegram, which they scandalized over the following weeks and months. Before I move on discussing the chat group network, sometimes referred to as the Hannibal network, named after the administrator who himself had named himself after the protagonist from the American show The A-Team, I want to speak about the peculiarity in the Bundestag that involved both Franco Albrecht and Maximilian Tischer, because it is seen as a sign that they have some some feud going on. Franco appeared in the building of the Bundestag, the Reichstag, with a white cap, a beard, and long braided hair. And I must also say that I'm distancing myself from that strange Nancy hairdo. Franco, if you are listening, that's so Greta Thunberg, it's completely unacceptable. How dare you?
How dare you? How dare you?
So he appeared, Franco Albrecht appeared in 2019, this year, at the on the day of the open doors, which is an occasion when the parliament opens up for the wider public and leads people around. And on that day, he was guided out of the building. The Bundestag guards were alerted to him, and a bit later, an MP of the AfD wrote on Facebook that his employee made the guards aware of Mr. Albrecht's presence. I don't know what Mr. Albrecht tried to do there. He talked to different politicians on the different booth. Apparently, he was also on the Green Party booth. So it's likely that he's a James O'Keefe style individual who just simply tries to collect information on his opponents, I think. And he was in that building, guided out by the guards because of an employee of an AfD MP, and that employee turned out to be his brother-in-law. That is quite peculiar, and I don't know whether it is really a sign of a feud or if that is a strange stunt. I'm just mentioning this because we don't know when people have connections with one another, how long they last, if people split up in anger and so on, even if there are familiar ties, things happen. So I just mentioned that because we never know how how much we can take from public information, and everything is flowing. So it's like they could be the best friends in the past, and now the relationship may have been broken. It is ultimately irrelevant for me. It is just important for you to remember, because that's what the left accuses people of, that they had some connection with somebody else years ago, and then therefore you are smeared for your contacts. That's what the left does. That is not what I believe in. So it is not important for me. It is not important for you if you have the same moral principle that I have and you respect freedom of association. But it is important for you if you want to understand the accusations the left levels against conservatives. You may also remember the contact Matthias F., his youth friend with which he went rowing as a hobby for some time, and he was the one who stashed a number of weapons and ammunition for Franco Albrecht when the police were raiding his home. And here are the details again. They were 1,083 bullets of diverse caliber, of which 885 were for the Heckler & Koch G36. There was a submachine gun of the type MP7 and and some tracer ammunition. They all were stashed in Matthias F.'s student dorm in Friedberg. Both Franco Albrecht and Matthias F. were active on the chat group Südkreuz, which belongs to the mentioned Hannibal network, and the chat protocol fell into the hands of the communist newspaper Taz. Matthias F. left a stupid remark that I will read out to you for the sake of transparency. He wrote, "Immigration is destroying our ethnicity that Hitler fought so hard for to preserve." Now, this is a one-off remark in the privacy of a chat group that was supposed to remain private. And, it can have many contexts. It can just be a provocation. It can be a joke. Whatever it is, I hate it really to judge the thoughts of people who are not strongly engaged in pushing a certain policy into the wider public, and who are not violent over their views. So I don't know. This is a one-off remark by Matthias F. A stupid one, no doubt. And this chat group is administered by the mentioned administrator Hannibal, or André S. He is known to Franco Albrecht. They met personally twice, once in in a shooting range for some training, for some shooting training, and another time at Hannibal's home. Hannibal, who was born 1985, is no longer employed as an elite soldier with the Command Special Forces, the KSK, Kommando Spezialkräfte, because there was, at the time of that spree of articles in the communist newspaper, a disciplinary inquiry into him because the police found detonators and grenades in his parents' home that belonged to him. He is not the only one in that chat group who had his homes raided. It's not only Franco Albrecht and Maximilian Tischer and Matthias F., but there are a number of cases that are opened after these links had been made between Franco and everybody else. I think Franco Albrecht's case was the first one that sparked ever more raids into people's homes and gun grabbing, an aggressive gun grabbing took place. I do understand that, of course, you cannot keep guns and ammunition and stuff, and some of those were apparently stolen. The grenades were stolen from the Bundeswehr. That's not okay. And of course, that should be punished as long as there are laws against them. I just think that, particularly as we're moving towards more hostile times, we should appeal to the common sense that these laws must go in future, so that people feel safe to protect their homes, to stash some weapons, just in case you get some burglars and stuff. And we are seeing a South African future ahead of us, so it is very important that we become more liberal in terms of gun rights. Hannibal is also sometimes claimed to have co-founded the veterans club UNITA. UNITA does deny that claim. They put out a statement explicitly denying any connections to either Franco Albrecht or to this chat group network, including Hannibal or Andre S. I don't know whether they are honest about this. I personally don't care. Another connection between Franco Albrecht and UNITA that, of course, is then also denied by that statement of theirs was that they found in a raid into Franco Albrecht's home a number of medals or insignia. There is no good English word for the German word Abzeichen, which can mean a lot of things that link you to a group and that are honorary signs of your participation in one activity or another that has to do with a group. So like a medal or something that's on your clothes to sign your accomplishments. These medals can be bought in this case, and they have distanced themselves since from Franco Albrecht as well as from that entire chat group. And I think I'm not, I don't want to be unfair, but I think a lot of this has to do with them distancing themselves in fear of being linked to all these home raids. They don't want their stuff to be raided as well, so they distance themselves from any connections to Franco Albrecht and anybody on that chat. I'm not sure whether they are honest or not, but they had all reasons not to draw the attention of the media to the possibility that they may keep weapons of their own. The chat group was discussing intensely the possibility of a future war, which I think is natural, and it's quite a popular sport in America right now, I would say. I also expect security personnel, the military and the police to think of the eventualities of such a scenario. It is the job of a soldier, and particularly an officer, an elite soldier, to go through scenarios, maneuvers, operations that involve killing people. I'm not sure why people get so stressed out about it. I will talk about this in my last video. I think it has to do with the immaturity of Germans in general. I do expect the Russian military to think about the scenario that involves dropping a bomb over my home. That also includes, the Chinese military thinking about how to deprive my hometown from all energy and freeze me in the winter and stuff. That is what I expect military personnel to think about, and I'm not taking it personal. But in the microaggression world of the left, everybody is a threat who thinks of violent things in the first place, and thoughts are a crime in itself, and therefore we have a right and an obligation to be constantly outraged and scared to death for every sign that people are actually preparing themselves for the case of a violent conflict. I'm very concerned about this, but okay, UNITA is distancing themselves from that entire chat group, and still the raids are going on. Outside of that Südkreuz chat group where Franco Albrecht and his youth friend was a member of, Hannibal also was connected to the Nordkreuz chat group. That was led by a former police officer, Marco G, as he was called in the media. And he is, I assume he is somehow connected to Hannibal. Maybe, I don't know how Telegram works. Maybe there's a technical subordination, or maybe that is just an informal one, that Hannibal is the more technical inclined mind, and the others are reporting to him some stuff, or I don't know how that works. Anyway, so there was a raid into a number of homes of that chat group Nordkreuz, which happened on the 28th of August 2017. The homes of 6 people, preppers, had been raided. Now let's listen to Marco G, who used to be with the SEK, Special Police Force, and whose home had been raided on the 28th of August 2017. His colleagues found weapons, stun grenades, and 23,800 bullets.
Ärgert sich über das martialische Vorgehen der Beamten.
Also hier ganz klare Hebelspuren. Hier wurde mit einem Kuhfuß versucht, die Tür aufzuhebeln. Ich mich an die Tür rangeschlichen und dann erkannte ich schon die Kollegen in Vollausrüstung, schwerer Schutzausstattung, und haben mich dann auch gesehen, haben sich als Polizei erkennen zu geben und haben mich dann auch mit ihren Waffen bedroht und mir dann gesagt, was ich zu tun hätte, dass ich mich auf den Boden legen soll.
11 Stunden lang durchforsten die Beamten sein Haus.
The woman in the off says that the raid took 11 hours, but that is harmless compared to the second raid, where his colleagues were more successful. And when they have confiscated a number of explosives, 31,500 bullets, muffler, and numerous weapons, not specified weapons, with the exception of one, which is an Uzi, an Israeli weapon. I'm not sure if I pronounce Uzi correctly. It's spelled Ayin Vav, it's Ayin Yot, or UZI in English, or UCI in Yankee. The media report on the 6th of November 2019 says that Marco G was still in custody at that time, so that was 4 months for storing weapons illegally. I must say that one of the weapons, and that is the said Uzi, had been stolen from the Bundeswehr, so that is kind of understandable, that there's theft involved, there's a law breaking involved. It is not just a matter of being safe and keeping some weapons for yourself. Still, the first raid was only because he was a witness for 2 separate cases into a lawyer with the name of Jan-Hendrik H. I mean, the names are not fully given in our media, but he's called Jan-Hendrik H, a lawyer in Rostock, and Heik J, a detective chief inspector. And for that, 11 hours raid is quite a bit too much for my taste. All of these people belong to the chat group Nordkreuz, which are administered by Marco G. The attorney Jan-Hendrik H is a member of the German Israeli Society, so he's very unlikely to have actually any neo-Nazi ties whatsoever. Was very engaged in the fight against anti-Semitism, indeed. According to Taz, he used the name of a serial killer victim, Mehmet Turgut, for a trophy on a private shooting competition. However, that is a very poor quoting. They wrote, say human beings who have to do with what's going on. That's how they quote that accusation. So it's it's very dubious at best. What's also quite dubious as a source is, in this case, Vice, the Vice magazine. They claim that the home raids against Jan-Hendrik H. and Heik J., that is the police inspector, were carried out by GSG 9 special forces from other states, because Heik J. Is in the police and of the state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. However, the GSG 9 is not a state unit. It is actually a federal police unit. So it does not make sense to say that they have to draw these kind of officers from different states. It's like they are like an FBI unit just in our country. The state special forces, I mean, each state also has some special operations forces against terrorism and stuff, but they are called SEK. That's the kind of force where Marco G worked for. However, they have found a faux list in the home of Jan-Hendrik H., which was compiled from a leaked customer list from an online shop that sells fashion, jewelry, hair dye, agent, and music popular in left-wing subcultures. I don't know, like punk music, green hair dye, and that kind of stuff. Some entries in that leaked customer list were also embellished with information from a police database. So here we have some actual crime involved in this, because, as I said, Marco G had 2 raids into his home, and there was a second one that also was into the homes of his colleagues from the SEK, that is the Special Forces of the States. And there were 3 active and 1 retired police officers that had their homes raided, and they found 10,000 shot of ammunition that were stolen from the state police force of Schleswig-Holstein. All of these 4 people had been critical of both Marco G and Jan-Hendrik H. in the chat protocol that is not available to myself, but according to news stories. Now, Nordkreuz had, in this chat conversations, also mentioned some preparations for a potential civil war. I have explained in my video about Franco Albrecht's planning or supposed terrorism, that I do expect of soldiers to prepare for this kind of for civil war. I also said this earlier in this video. I expect security circles to kind of think of violent interactions with other people, and they were planning actively for a day X. And with actively, I do not really mean a lot of preparations, and what the media pulls out is actually quite ridiculous. As I've already said in this video and also in my video about the evidence into Franco Albrecht's terror charge, I do not mind people preparing for a civil war scenario. I do not mind people stashing weapons and other items that you may need in a certain situation. I do not mind preppers. I do not mind tins or cans, as you call it in America. I'm fine with that. And the stuff the media has pulled out from this Nordkreuz group chat protocol is quite ludicrous. For example, they have found that some are storing canisters of petrol. So they have found petrol, and also 200 body bags to remove the corpses. Also, and probably more frightening to many, is slaked lime. That is often used in mass graves because of the epidemics that come with any war, actually. And slaked lime is often used to disinfect corpses, and also because they are a bit alkaline. They help to decompose the bodies. I will use my last video to talk about why we are so panicky about slaked lime and body bags and weapons and ammunition and so on, because I think we are a bit neurotic. And I hope you enjoyed this series so far, and I'll see you soon. Bye.